a good day. And somebody had told us happy Hidi, right? I hope somebody did. If you didn't, then it's fine. Okay, so this is what we did, I think, last time. So we looked at a brief overview of PHP, tested something little with its syntax. We wrote a brief code on it and we displayed it. And we also looked at a bit of variables, constants, and data types. I think that's where we stopped. So we're going to pick up from there today. I remember mentioning what PHP is, being a hypertext a preprocessor language, which runs on the server. That's why we call it a server-side scripting language. When you're working with HTML and other databases like MySQL, Postgres, SQLite, etc., PHP becomes your best friend because you're going to have a very good flow in it because it integrates perfectly well with it. And the code that we run in PHP, at the end of the day, you're going to realize that if we don't have a server, we won't be able to run it. I introduced server in the first week, I think. So I don't want to go into that. You probably just go ahead and look at that later. Okay, so that's why we choose PHP, its simplicity, flexibility, and also a lot of community supports out there. Now, this how a PHP syntax looks like. We have tags, which are representing our PHP code. So we have the start tag of PHP, and everything should appear within the tag of PHP. So anything that we put outside the tag of PHP, it's not going to be recognized as a PHP code. So if you want to write your PHP code, make sure that you have put it within that particular tag, and then it will be able to detect it. The server, I mean, when you try to run your PHP code, it's going to be able to detect that. So we have two standard tags that we work with on PHP. Actually, there are three, but the third one is just for displaying text on the, or maybe say displaying our content or output if we want to, or maybe we don't want to print echo something. So to write your tag, you just put the left angle brackets and then the question mark and then the word PHP. That's going to be your open tag. Then when you have to close it, you put the question mark again and then the right angle bracket. Or if you don't want to put the word PHP, but make sure that there is the left angle bracket and then a question mark at the start. Then at the end, there should be a question mark and then a right angle bracket. That is going to form for you your PHP tag. Right. So let's just go briefly through this one again. Constructs in PHP, or maybe say what I normally call the building blocks in PHP. One is the variables. If you have ever introduced yourself in a programming language like say Java or C++, you already know what variables are. You could think of it just as a container where you use it for keeping your data or your information. So PHP has variables as well. And the syntax for defining a variable in PHP is a little bit different from these other languages. We use a $sign, or we append a $sign at the beginning of the name of our variable. So it starts with a $sign, then the name of the variable comes in. And the other things remains the same. Initializing or assigning a value to the variable, we use an equal sign. So whatever is on the right hand side of the equal sign, we put it in the left hand side of the equal sign. So what is on the left hand side of the equal sign in most cases is our variable or any identifier that we have at the end of the day. Apart from variables, we have also what we call data types. Again, data types is simply the kind of information, the type of data or the kind of data that we want to put inside our variable or the kind of data that we want the variable to hold at any time. And PHP has about 6 or 7 types. It has strings, which we already know. It's just any text that we put within opening quote, the double quote, and then even a double quote or a single quote, any text, any number, any character that we put within the quotes, whether single or double quotes, is going to be a string. Then integers, we already know, are numbers without decimal places. Floats are the numbers, but this time around with decimal places. And booleans are the yes and no's, the trues and false, the ones and zeros in different languages. But for PHP, we know it's a true and false. Arrays, these are, again, if you're trying to store data, in a variable, we can store only one data item. If it's a name, then we can store a name of only a single person. If we want to store more than one name in a variable, it's not going to be successful. Any name that we are going to store, say we have defined up a variable there called name, and we assign it a value called Lydia. This time around, if we want to put in another value, say Katie, the name that is going to be there, the name which was there earlier, is going to be replaced by the new name that we're going to put. So a variable can store only one data at a time. Now, if we want to store more than one value in that same location, which we're calling variable, then we need another thing, which is called an array. So PHP arrays are basically, let's say, storage constructs or some other construct in a programming language that allows us to store data of the same type in a particular location. So we are going to be able to store more than one data item, but those data items must be of the same types in most cases. So if it's a string array, then it has to put in the string array, unless we are looking at other types of arrays which are called associative arrays. But for string arrays, we need to put them as strings. So an array is going to be able to store more than one data item at a time. So now if I want to store all your names, say Solo or maybe say Katie or Zai, I'm going to just declare an array which stores 3 or more names. Okay, so instance, if you have a variable, or maybe say if you have a data item and you know it's not going to change at any time, you don't need to create a variable for it. You just define what we're calling a constant. A constant is also a name storage location, like a variable. The only difference between the two is that for a variable, its data item, you can change. What you have put in it, you can change. But for a constant, once you have already put something in a constant, you can't change it. That's the only two difference. Operators, we already know whenever we want to perform any mathematical arithmetics or any other kind of operation on a variable or any other value, then we need operators. So the simplest operators are the arithmetic operators that you already know, the plus, addition, the multiplication, the subtraction, the division. Those are the simple operators that we have. Then there are others which we call comparison operators. Maybe we want to know where the number is greater than the other, or maybe say we want to know where the number is equals to the other. That is comparison operators. Then when it comes to logical operators ends up in a Boolean results. So we want to know at the end of the day, the results that we're going to get is a yes or a no. So we combine the comparison operators with the logical operators to form a solid condition, or maybe say a solid statement that we are going to look at later when we touch the control structures, especially the conditional statements. Then assignment operators, if we want to put a data value or an item inside a variable, then we'll probably need what we're calling assignment operators. Assignment operators, the simplest explanation I can give is that it just states that pick what is on my right hand side and put inside what is on my left hand side. That's what we have as assignment operators. Another construct that we will be looking at is the control structures. Control structures determines the flow of our program. Once we write our PHP program and I want it to execute, maybe PHP by default, it will follow from the first line of your code, it will run it until it reach the end of the line. So from line number 1 to line number 2, line number 3, in that particular order. Then it will go ahead and run that until it finishes running. But now with control structures, we can go ahead and tell PHP that no, we don't really want to do that. You can just go ahead and execute this line, then jump to line number 10 and continue from there. Or go ahead and repeat line number 1 to 5 many times until I tell you what to do. Okay, then loops. So loops, that's when we shall be able to repeat the steps. Conditional statements like the if statement, that's where we're going to be able to jump a particular line, or maybe say run a particular line or skip a particular line of our code. We shall look at that one later. Functions, maybe there is a part of your code that you feel like you will be using it most of the time, so you can extract that part of the code and put it inside what we call a function, which again we're going to look at later. Classes and objects, PHP also bring in the idea of object-oriented programming. So classes, you already know what it is. Just think of it as a blueprint or a template for creating your object. And your object in this case is going to be the real world item, or maybe say, think of it as the instance of that particular real world item. So if we look at a class as a student, if we go ahead and start talking about an individual student, then we are saying that particular individual student is an object. So the object is going to be the actual representation of that particular student. Super globals. There are some other variables which are found in PHP, whose functionalities are already known to PHP. Whenever we call it, PHP already know by default what they are for and what they are supposed to do for us. And you are going to interact with a few of them, like the get, the posts, and even the session and the cookie, or the servers. In most cases, when you start handling forms, form handling with PHP, you'll get to know them. So these ones are also variables, but then they are inbuilt and you can access it anywhere in PHP. That's why the name global comes in. A global variable is open and you can access it anywhere. A local variable, it's kind of like tied within a small room. You can only access it within that particular small room. Shall look at scopes shortly later. Okay, so let's go into the details of variables and data types, but now this time around, how we create and use them. So I'm just going to go through this page, and then later on we try it practically. Try to run a PHP code and see how it is done. Kind of like a repetition of what we had already done, so I may decide to skip the practical session and then we move to another. Okay, so our variables, as I've mentioned, these are containers or storage locations in our memory where we are going to use to keep our data while PHP program is running. So to define a variable in PHP, again, as I've said, we need a $sign. So we're going to get the $sign appended at the beginning of our variable name. And then later on, we shall have the variable declared. Then to assign a value or to put some item or some value in our variable, we need the assignment operator. So with the assignment operator, we're going to put the variable name on the left hand side, then put the value that we want to assign or put inside our variable. We put it on the right hand side of the assignment operator. Then after that line, when you check inside the container called with that particular name of the variable. When we check inside that variable, we are going to get the value which we just stored. Now, if we look at this simple example here, we have a variable called name being declared, and initially we are assigning it a value, Daisy. Then we have another variable being defined here called age, and initially here again we are assigning it a value, 25. So any other time we access these two variables, we expect to find inside age, we expect to find 25. Inside the variable name, we should expect to find Daisy. And this is how we access our variables. Now, echo is one of the functions in PHP. They're already predefined. They come with PHP. So anytime you want to display a data or anything in PHP, you use echo. So that's one way of displaying information in our data or in our PHP. Okay. Now, apart from variables, we talked about constants, and then we said that constants, any value we're going to put in it, it's never gonna change. The way we declare or define our constants is a little bit different from the way we do it with variables. With the constants, we use the function called define, which takes in two variables, two parameters, the name of our constant and then the value that we want to put inside constant. And as I've mentioned at the beginning, anything you put inside a constant won't change. It will remain the same. So if you know that the value that you have is not going to change anytime, but you're always using it, then define a constant for it. Say, for instance, you're calculating the area of a cycle, or maybe say the perimeter of a cycle. What you need is the radius, or if not the radius, you need also the pi. We know that the value of pi is always constant. We don't get it changing at any point in time. So in that case, you can define that as your constant. Then the next time you want to use it, you just call the name of the constant. So the first parameter you have passed in the define function when you are declaring your constant, that's going to be the name of your constant. So anytime you want to use the value of the constant, you just call that particular name. Then we go to the second parameter, which is the value that you want to store in your constant. Okay. Right, let's run through data types real quick, and we shall go ahead and try to use it practically. So as I've mentioned in PHP, we have about 7 different types of data types, and for them, they are grouped in a certain order or in a certain category. First is the common ones or the scalar types, which at the end of the day, you'll realize that you shall have only one value stored in them. Then the compound types, probably this is where arrays comes in. The special types, it's going to be around, let's say, our defined could be like classes, etc., or objects. So let's start with the scalars. The scalars are the normal data types which you already know. And usually at the end of the day, you're going to have that any variable, which is a scalar, will store only one data item at a time. If you look at the compound, that's probably where arrays are going to fall into place. We store more than one value. Right, so integer data types are going to be just numbers. They store numbers without decimal points. Say 10, 20, -10, -5. Those are integer variables. And any any data which is of integer type is what we are going to have that number without decimal places. Then for numbers with decimal places, we call them floats, or sometimes we call it double. Though in other languages, a float and then double are different types already. That one is common in C++. Yeah. For C++, it considers a float as having a fixed precision or the fixed number of decimal places. The only difference with float and then double is that the number of decimal places, one has only two number of decimal places, one has more than two decimal places. So in that case, we're going to realize that even the space it takes in the memory is going to be different. Why? Because we need to cater for that our overflow. What if the number has more than two decimal places? We need to think about that as well. If not, any operation we have that ends in a result of greater than two decimal places is going to fail. That's why we need those two data types. For PHP, it handles that for us by default, even if we don't specify it. But languages like Java and C++, you have to make sure you define that. Or maybe say you tell the compiler the type of that variable. Strings, these are just going to be letters or letters of alphabet, any type of character that we put them within a quote. And this quote can be either single quote or double quotes. They're all the same as long as the pair matches. If you start with a single quote, you have to close with a single quote. If you start with a double quote, you must close with a double quote. Like an example here that we have. Then the Boolean types, these are the yes and no's, or in other words, the truth and false. So if your results ends up in a true or false, then you know that you're dealing with a Boolean scalar type. Then for the compound types, this is arrays coming in having more than one value stored in a particular location. So an array is one of them, which is going to store for us a collection of many values. But the good thing here is they have to be same type. So if they are the same type, like the index array, then that's good for us. But for the associative arrays, it's a little bit different. We may have our keys being a string, then our values itself is going to be also a different type. Say it can be a string, it can be an integer or a float, etc. So with the associative arrays, you're going to realize that we have it stored in what we call a key value pair. So you could think of a table. A table has a column here. So we could say that for this column called name, it has in the first row, it has a value called John. Then in the column called age, in the first row, it has a value called 30. So that's why I'm saying for associative arrays, we have it in a key value pair, and that's how we represent it down there. That's what we call associative arrays. For index array, index means that the positioning of that value is in a certain index. So we kind of indexed it, or maybe say we give it the position, we give it numbers, and the numbering starts from 0. So maybe say instead of starting from number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, we start from number 0. So indexing in an array starts from 0. In any other language, you have to note that it's going to start from 0. Most of these constructs we're looking at, the data types, they're all common in many of these other languages. So if you understand it in one language, you can apply the same principle in a different language. The only difference is that it's going to be, its implementation is going to be a little bit different for you. Okay, so now if we define our RSA fruits, which has apple, banana, and cherry. So to define an array in PHP, what we do, we use the function called array. So inside the function called array, we pass in the values that we want to store in that particular array, separated by a comma. So each individual value that we have in an array, once we separate it with a comma, it becomes an item in the array, and it gets a position. So in this case, if we want to access apple, we're going to call fruits. Then we put the square bracket, open square bracket, we put the position of that particular fruit. Now apple is at position 0. We put 0 in that square bracket, then we close it, and it's going to extract for us or return for us apple. If we change the position to say 2, it's going to return for us cherry. If we change the position to 1, it's going to return for us a banana. That is how we access arrays, items in an array. We're going to look at that into detail later when we discuss arrays. Objects, again, this is object-oriented programming in PHP. So we said objects are basically instances of our classes, and it contains data and then behavior, or what we call methods. So to use an object, you first need to create your class. And to create a class in PHP, that's how we do it. Set the keyword class, then the name of the class, you open a bracket, and now you go ahead and define your data. Data is going to be the different properties or the different variables that you define inside your PHP. Then functions are going to be all the other methods or all the other behaviors or all the other things which that particular class, which that particular object can do. Like for instance, a car. Inside a car, we know that the car can move faster, a car can start, a car can stop. So we need to define those behaviors. We need to define the methods. We need to define the functions inside our class, so that next time now we create a car from the template class that we had defined earlier, we can be able to access all those behaviors or functions. Again, this is going to come in later in the next class. Okay, functions. Maybe let's first do a brief example and then we come and touch functions. Okay, so I'm going to try to run a small code of PHP that should explain for us data types and variables. So we're going to see how to create a data type in PHP, and then I'm going to show you also how to use those data types and then operators still in PHP. And later on, we shall try to access the PHP from our HTML page. Okay, but first let's assume we have only PHP. Now to run a PHP, as I remember saying at the beginning, probably not in this class, we have to go ahead and have a server running, because remember saying PHP is a server-side language. So server-side languages only runs on the server. It does not run anywhere else. So you have to go ahead and get a server running. Now, if you're on a local machine, say Windows, or maybe say Linux, or maybe say iMac, or maybe say any Apple MacBook, you have to go ahead and download a server and run it. So for Windows, I always prefer using either ZAMPP or WAMP, because that one comes with 3 applications already, or 3 softwares already incorporated together. So they're all integrated. We have the server already, which is running Apache. MySQL is already there for handling our databases. And then PHP, which is the language that we are working with here. So we need to install PHP. We need to install its server for us to be able to run it. Then later on, if we want to start accessing the database, we need to also install the database. So it's either going to be MySQL or Postgre. PHP integrates much more easily with MySQL, though with Postgre also it can work. Or actually, not like it can work, it works also perfectly with Postgres. Though I prefer, when I'm dealing with PHP, I always prefer using MySQL in my classes. And you guys also need MySQL because that's where you're going to be tested in. Right, so we're going to install XAMPP as our server handler. If members say you are on Windows, you're going to install XAMPP, or even if you prefer WAMP, you also go ahead and install that. But me, I prefer using XAMPP in this case. So that's what we're going to run. Now I'm going to go back to my browser, and I'll open a new tab, and then I will search for XAMPP. Let me increase this font size a little so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to type XAMPP, then I press enter, and it's going to open for me the page where XAMPP is. So after I get that, okay, I think I'm not, let me share the entire screen instead. Let me go to here and then share the entire screen so that you can be able to see everything. So I'm going to present something else, and I go to entire screen, click on that, and then share. Okay, now I believe you can see my screen fully. So like I'd said, I was saying that we come to here and then we type XAMPP. Okay, then I press enter, and it should open us this page. Now, XAMPP is here just easily available. So you click on it, and you go and choose the latest version that you want. Now the current version is XAMPP 8.0 with PHP 8. It has either 8.0 or 8.1 or 8.2. Me, I prefer the one with PHP 8.2. So I'm going to use the latest version, 8.2. So I click on this. The good thing, I already have it installed, but I just want to show you how to download and install it. So once it's already finished downloading, which I believe it should, okay, it's here. It's going to install in a pre. So once it has already finished downloading, okay, then we shall be able to, shall go ahead and start. Okay, this one is already done. I'm going to close this. It's running here. It should be done in a few seconds. And I'm going to open up my Explorer. Okay, so I'll go to downloads, and I find it here. So if you have not yet gotten it installed, you just go ahead and double click on it, or maybe say right click and then select install. It's going to ask you for the permission to install, which later on I can click on yes. I think you don't see that, but it's going to ask you for the permission to install. You click on yes. After clicking on the yes, it's going to start the download. But mine is already installed. So here it's going to tell me, ask me for the permission. This one is trying to say that I should not install it in the program files. Why? Because I have a user account control activated. This one normally just prevents your exam from accessing some permissions lanes, say accessing your firewall so that it starts a server. If you don't allow this, or maybe say if you put it within program files, C drive, then program files, you have to go ahead and give XAMPP a permission, or you have to go ahead and deactivate a user account control, which later on is going to give XAMPP free access to that. Okay, so now you just go ahead and follow these steps. So you click on next, 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 next until you finish the download. So you click on next, you choose the different options that you want to download, and then you click on next, you choose the location. Always your location should be inside the C drive and in a folder called XAMPP. Immediately in the C drive, you should have a folder called XAMPP there. Then you can click on next, and then okay, I'd say here is saying that it's not empty because I already have ZAMPP installed, but for you it will not say this. So you have to go ahead and click next and continue, and then it will install. Me, I'm going to cancel now because I have it installed. I'll say yes. So once that one is already done, your installation is already done, you have to come to your local disk C where you have the thing installed. So I'm going to go to the this PC in local disk C. Then inside here, I'm going to click the folder called ZAMPP, which should open up like this. Then I'm going to look for ZAMPP control, the second last, mine is as the second last file here. So I double click on that to open it up. Okay, which should open up a ZAMPP control panel. So after the ZAMPP control panel is open, let me see this one here. So after it's already open, last time I think you saw me, we are starting MySQL only, but this time around we need Apache because this is the server which PHP depends on. Okay, so you click on the start for Apache, and we wait for it to turn green. Once it turns green, then it means our server is running. So right now, this is running. If it fails to turn green, then it means something is wrong. Probably you have a port issue. So you have to come to the config here. Then you open up, where's Apache cons? So you could open up php.in and then you go and change that configuration, or you go to httpd and then you change the port configuration depending on where you should. You would find the port. Okay. If not, then you can come to the logs here and then you check the access log for the different errors that you have found in, and it will guide you on what to do. Now, if that one is already done, if we are dealing with a database also, we'll have to go ahead and start our MySQL, but right now we are not. So I'm going to click on admin here, which is going to open up an admin panel. So that particular admin panel is going to contain everything that I need to access my ZAMPP. Okay. Now, this folder here, this is basically, let me say let me close it. So inside this folder, if I go to my exact server folder in my, where the location of my ZAMPP is, I'm going to have what we are calling a folder called dashboard. So inside dashboard, we have a code which is displaying this for us. Now, our task is also to go ahead and put all our PHP code inside the ZAMPP folder, or the folder is called htdocs. So that is basically where all our PHP code is supposed to sit, because once we run our server, the server looks inside that particular folder htdocs and it can run anything we have. If we put it outside there, the server is not going to find it, even if it's a correct code. So let's go back here, come here, up where you open your ZAMPP control, go up a little and look for a folder called htdocs, which is this one here. So you double click on it to open. Now inside here, this is where we're going to put our code. Any code that we want to run, we're going to put it here. So the best thing to do would be creating a new folder first. So we could create a new folder, click on new, and call it a PHP class, or just PHP, or my PHP, like that, so that it doesn't conflict with anything. The content that we were seeing earlier is inside this folder called dashboard. And if we go to our browser back, you will see the name dashboard here. So that is how we access the content. Now, if we open the folder we have just created, my PHP, we're going to see an empty content. Why? Because there is currently nothing inside here. So we're going to create our file, our PHP file, and put it in the folder called my PHP. And once we come and open it, we put the name of the file. We could call it, let me say, test.php. So when you tap this, PHP is going to tell us, or the server is going to tell us, not found. Why? Because that particular file, test.php, is still not there. But we can come back and then create it inside here. So we open the folder, my PHP, and then we can create this particular file, test.php. But where I want to create it from, I'm going to open again another software. In this case, is called, we are going to call it, it's Notepad++, the normal one that we normally use. So we're going to create, open Notepad++. So I come to the search here, and then you just type Notepad, which should show you exactly what is here. All right, so it's going to open Notepad++ for me, and I will create a new file. So once I open this Notepad and then I open a new file, I'm going to save it first immediately. So I'll go to File. The first time you're saving a file, you follow this procedure. Then after you have already followed this procedure, anytime you make changes to this file, you just click on Ctrl S, or you come to File and then click on Save. So for the first time, we have to go through our file, click on the file here on the menu, then come to Save As. Then from here, we're going to look for where exactly we had created our my PHP file. Inside XAMPP folder, inside htdocs, we created a folder called my PHP. So we're going to open that folder and then save our file with the name test.php, or any other name we want to give our file. So we come to local disk C and open XAMPP, then come here and look for htdocs, which is this one. Double click on that, then come and look for our my PHP, which is here, this folder we created. If you had not yet created any folder before, you come and click on this option, new, and then you give it a name, say my folder or any other thing. Then it will create that. So you double click on it, or you click on open here. But me, I'm just going to choose my PHP. I double click on it, and then it's going to open the file, the folder where I want my work for PHP to be in. So now I come back to the file name option here. So down right here, you just see file name. And in file name, I'm going to click on, I'm going to give it the file name that I wanted is tests. Let's put it testings.php so that we understand something. So testing.php, our file extension must be .php. Then under save as type, we're going to look for PHP. So click on where there is normal text, or maybe say just click on this box, or click on the arrow pointing down at the end here, and then you look for PHP. Where you find PHP around P, you choose that. So here we have PHP hypertext preprocessor file. So we click on that, or we select that, and it's going to be good for us. Then maybe if your computers allow, you can select this box, say append extension by default. So, and now I can click on save. Great. So I have my PHP file already saved. Now I can go back and start running, or maybe say writing my code. So let's test this file here. Or before even you test that, I just wanted to show you this is the syntax that you want to work with. So the first thing you're going to type in your PHP file is going to be its tag. So the opening tag and the closing tag of PHP, you must go ahead and put them. Then we can type this example here. Okay. So coming back here, the opening tag is either this PHP or just this left angle bracket and then a question mark. Either of those two should work. then I always prefer closing it immediately before I do any other thing so that I don't forget. Okay, now I can go ahead and display some text. Say echo hello PHP world. Okay, like that. Then I click on. After this is the changes. So I expect now when I go and refresh my page where I was having test.php, I should see something, but I'm not going to see something unless I change it to testing.php. Okay, so you click on save here, or you come to file and then click on save, or you just write, Control S on your keyboard. You press Control S on your keyboard and you'll be able to see your PHP. You save your file. So come back to our browser, then we refresh this page. Right now we are still seeing nothing, but then if we come back to the folder, right now we are going to see a file, and the file is testing.php. But for us, we are running test.php, which is not found in our myfolder.php. When you go to myfolder.php, we are not going to see any file called test.php. If I go to my file, my PHP folder, the only thing I can see here is testing.php. But if you look at here, I'm trying to access test.php. So sometimes you'll get this kind of error of HTTP error 400. So this one here saying not found, it means the file you're trying to access does not exist within particular location. So you come and check the name of the file that you want to access, or you come to the folder from the browser here and then see if it's listed as the parent directory, under this folder. If it's not there and you're sure it's there, come back to your folder on the local drive here and then check. If it's there, then it means you're probably accessing a different folder here. Okay, but now that I know my file is called testing.php, I'm going to write the same name, testing.php. And once I press enter, I should be able to see hello world PHP, which is what I'd put inside Notepad++ here. So that is how we display PHP text, or maybe say any other output in PHP. Okay, now I can decide to test variables now. So we're going to create 3 variables. One is going to be course. So we said to declare a variable in PHP, we use a $sign, right? So $sign, and then the first one is going to be, say, student name. And I'm going to give it a name, say, okay. So I'm going to give it a name, say Solomon. Okay. Then can give it create another variable called course and call it web application development. Okay. Then maybe we can create another thing is PHP statements ends or terminates in with a semicolon, just like in Java. So you have to make sure you don't forget to end any statement with a semicolon. If you do that, like if I leave this one here without ending with a semicolon, we're going to get an error. So let me first say age. I could say age is 23, and then enter that. So now I'm going to display something. I say echo. Okay. Say my name, or I'll just say name, and I'll say the name is student name, comma, Sorry. Okay, then course. Say the course is course. Then say age. They will have it as age. Sorry. Okay, like that. Then we end. So when we save this and refresh, we expect to see name, this name that we have put, a course, this course that we have put, and then age, this age that we have put. But the only challenge here is we are not going to see that because we have an error on this line. But anyway, let's assume there is no error. Okay, then we refresh. So this is the error that you should get familiar with in PHP. So the error here says pass error, syntax error, unexpected variable name, age, n, line, in, C drive, XAMPP folder, htdocs, my PHP, testing.php. So in the file called testing.php, which is found in this location, on line number 7, there is this error. We are not sure about this variable you're talking about, age. The reason why it's saying so right here is because it assumes that this age is actually a continuation of this particular line because we don't have a semicolon. So a PHP error debugger is not very intelligent compared to other languages. So you probably may need to be having a little bit of a knowledge about PHP so that you can easily understand what is happening. Okay, so after we have corrected the error like this, we click on save. After saving, we can go ahead and refresh our page now. After refreshing, now we can see everything as we wanted. But the challenge here is everything is on the same line. So how do we make sure that all these texts are on different lines? That's where your HTML comes in. So HTML, as we know, it's for formatting our output on the web page. So to do the formatting, we can bring HTML tags. So you can easily put HTML tags inside our PHP echo function immediately, just like this, and you'll be able to get the content. So here, instead of putting this, okay, I can go ahead and put the break statement here so that I have the course displayed on a new line. The break tag in HTML helps us in moving our other contents to the next line. Just think of it as pressing an enter in your Word document. So you press the key enter, you should be able to see your content on a new line. Maybe for you to see everything here, let me move this one down here. So you click on save, Control S, and then we refresh. So now everything comes on the new line. That's how we display our content on PHP. That's the basic PHP code. So now let's try to go ahead and see if we can bring in the idea of data types. Oh, maybe let me show you how to use a constant. So we're going to define a constant called pi. What's the value of pi? If you still remember your math. So we said that when you want to define a constant, you go ahead and use the function define, and then we said our function define takes 2 parameters. The first one is the name of your variable, the name of your constant, which in this case is going to be pi. Then the second one is the value of pi, which can be anything. So here our initial value of pi is going to be 3.14. Then to use that, we can go ahead and say echo, say pi is equals to, then I put variable pi. Okay. All right. So we can save this and then we run it. So come back to our browser. We refresh this. Echo. Okay, I think we have an issue in our code. It's just not how you access your variable constant. I mean, so we're going to just put down. Okay, sorry. We have something here we have not done. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and echo refresh this. Undefined variable pi on line number 10. Where is our notepad? Now, okay. So this is actually just pi. Okay. Now the challenge with variables is that, I mean, with constant, you can't access it the same way that you access your variables. You have two ways. You either concatenate or you use what we call the dot operator. So we have pi, simply another way. Okay. And I say it's equals to, close this, then if you use that dot property, then pi, like that. So we should be able to get our value of pi displayed the way we want it. Unsupported operands of type plus sign. Oh yeah, it doesn't need I use a concatenator in this case. It's just the, I mean, it's just the dot property which we can use to access it. So basically that's how you're going to access your value of pi. If it's a constant, that's how you access it. Let's add a break tag here at the end of edge so that it moves stuff to the next line like this. So that's how we can play around with our PHP code. Now, have we tested anything else? Yes, we have declared the variables. We have looked at data types, say integers, we have seen it already. Strings, we have seen it already. Maybe say float. Float, we have also seen it already. We have defined it as a constant. Strings, we have already seen it. The only thing we have not seen it is Booleans. So let's create a Boolean. So I'm going to create a new variable called as attended. So as attended is going to track whether that particular student has attended or not. So here I'm going to say, today I'll set true. Then another one is valid. So I'm going to say false. Then when I display these results, let me just echo a break here. Now there's something that I want you to see. I'm going to show you later. Let me just echo a break tag here. Okay. So I'm going to display our Boolean variable echo. I'll say Solomon has attended, or maybe say just ask a question. Has Solomon attended a class? So it's going to be a question, whose output I'm going to have as a Boolean. So if I see true, then I'll say that Solomon has attended. If I see false, I'll know that he didn't attend. Okay, so we terminate that and then I come and say, okay, the answer result is valid. So I'll get the output and say is valid. Now, once I get is valid, I'm going to just break. Let's move the cursor to the new line and then we end. So when I save this and I refresh it, where are we? Yeah, I should be able to get. Now, I remember telling you that for Booleans, we have yes, no, true, false, or 1 and 0. For the true, sir, are false. Then, okay, if we want to, I don't want to do this, but let me do it. But as intended. Maybe you want to know exactly the type, or maybe say different information about that particular variable. So it tells us it's a Boolean, and the type of that particular Boolean value is a truth. Then is valid is not is valid is not displaying anything. Why? It's simple. With PHP, the value of false is usually not known. Instead of putting a 0 here, it just puts a null. And that's probably when the reason why we're not seeing this. But then if we see a 1, then we know that particular result is a truth. So sometimes when you're going to write your conditional statements later on, you may be interested in checking and say using a comparison operator, something like say, sorry, is valid equals to say 1, or maybe say equals to true, or maybe say equals to false. So either of those two is going to work. That's how you're going to form a condition later. We shall see that when we go to the conditional statements. Okay. All right. Any other thing we have not yet tested? Okay, let's see. Compound types. I really don't want to touch arrays today, but let me just give you a brief overview of whatever is there. Then we shall, I think, stop there for today. So when you look at arrays, to create an array, we go ahead and define the array name. Okay. And you say equals to, we call the array function. And then we pass in here the array items. Okay. So that's what we do when we're defining or declaring arrays. But I'm going to comment this one out. And so this is how we comment out in PHP. PHP comments, you use a /. So I'm going to define an array called say students array. Okay. And I call it's called the array function, passing the names of the students. Say Katie, Jan, say Zai. But Chanel likes calling herself that, so let me put that. And who else? Use Solomon so many times. Let me first let him rest. Now, this is how we access items in I didn't really want to introduce arrays today, but then let me just go ahead and do it. Now, let's display the entire items in our array. And how do we do that? We can just echo and say student array. And then we call the students. Okay, like that. Then you can break here so that so with the break tag, even if you close or you don't close, it's going to work. So echo student. So you have position 1. What have we not closed? Okay, we have not closed the quotation here. That's why it's not access. So position 1. At position 1, if you want to access the student at position 1 in an array, we say student array, then square bracket, open square bracket, then you put the position. Position 1 is always at 0. Then we close that. Okay. And maybe I can break the tag. Okay, is it no array? Okay, I get it. Array access. If you're trying to access an array, it behaves like what? Let me see. Array to string conversion on line number. Yeah, we're trying to access an array, but then it says it's a string. So in that case, it cannot accept. So the best thing to do would be move this out, okay, and use the concatenator. The dot product is basically what we are going to use. Then we can put this one out. So it's going to display for us the content of the array. And it's actually still going to be the same thing. Break. Yeah, what did we miss here? So we need to put that full stop there again, and we should be able to get that. Okay, so this is not how we access the contents of our array. If we want to access all the contents of the array, we have to use a loop, which is basically what we have not yet started with at the moment. But the only thing you can do is access arrays at a particular position. So at position 1, we have that. Then maybe say we want to access array at position. Let me just copy this and paste 0, 1, 2, 3. Let's say at position 2 and 3. So at position 2, it's going to be 1. How do we know that? We start from here 0, and then 1, and then 2, and then 3. So that's how you access that. Then at point, or maybe say it's not position. Let's use item, because if I use position, it's going to confuse you. So it's item, and then item 3. Let's say item number 3. So item number 3 is going to be found at position 2 or at index 0. I mean at index 2. Now, there is also another thing, changing the content of our arrays. So we know that currently item number 3 is going to be this. So item number 3 is going to be this one here. But we can change that particular item number 3. And how do we do that? We first access that item at position number 3, which is it number 3? 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so item number position number 3 is, let me say position number 4. So maybe let me first print item position number 4 here. Okay, so currently item number at position number 4, about item 4. So we're going to change item 4 to, so the name, let's change the name from Doe to Solomon. Okay, now when we print our fourth item, this time round, we don't expect to find Doe. We expect to find Solomon. But before we do that, let me first comment these two out so that we just display our contents. Okay, so we come back to our browser, refresh the page, and see this. Let me remove this var dump right now. It's not important. Okay, let me just create something here small. Move this content a little bit down. Okay, cool. I'm going to put 2 breaks to move my things down. Just a break tags for now. Okay, so it's going to move this other contents a little bit down. Okay, right here. So at position item at position number 1 in our array is kt. At position number 4 is do. Okay, at position number 2 or item number 2 is a Jane. Then item number 3 is sign. All right. Now we want to change item number 4. Okay, so this is how we change item number 4. We access that position and then we assign it with a new value. Remember assignment operator, pick whatever is on the right hand side and put it inside whatever is on the left hand side. Then we can display the new changes and then we see. So the end of the day, I'm going to run this and then we can see. So earlier we had do, but now it's saying it's Solomon. So that's how you change. That's how you play around with your arrays. Anything else? Classes? Yeah, no, let's not touch classes right now. Those are way bigger stuff, which will come in later. Okay, I think that should be enough. That's how you create your PHP files. The first thing is you need to make sure your server is running. If you have not yet installed your servers, please go ahead and repeat, go back to, I think I'm going to share with you this video, then let me say I'll just upload it and then later on I'll share the link and then you can go ahead and repeat the steps. If there is anywhere you're getting stuck, rewatch it because I remember mentioning each and everything: installing the servers and creating your PHP file, accessing the XAMPP, and then starting it, etc. That should be enough for you to get started. Then the next time we get this other practice again, we're going to move to the next step, which would be now not just stopping here. I think instead of going to functions, I may introduce something different. But anyway, we shall see that in the next one. Okay, that should be enough. Okay, if you have another questions, I'll answer it next time. But for now, have a good day.